Okay, cool. So once you finish the closure exercises, you may not have started them yet. That's okay. I'm just getting into this because somebody is coming up on the end of them. And once again, I think what I'm about to introduce, if you get to it today, you can start working on it. If you don't, that's okay. I think we're just going to keep working on this tomorrow. And if you finish this, I've actually got some other toy problems and practice problems up my sleeve that I can give you to work on. But once you finish closure exercises, you're going to go to the section called re-implementing underscore. And once again, you can access this through the link that I've hosted on GitHub Pages, but there's also a file inside of the repo that you pulled down called implementing underscore.html, and you can open it locally if you want to. So what this is going to have you do, it's going to walk you through re-implementing functions from the underscore library. So you're going to be building your own versions of them. Some of them, let's see, some of them are just building them from scratch, and some of them specifically ask you to reuse other functions that you've already built in your implementation. So for instance, each is a fairly useful function, and I would recommend when you can find ways of reusing it to try to reuse that instead of using a for loop. It's not necessarily faster. A lot of times it's cleaner, but it's also just a good exercise in using callbacks and learning how functions and values get passed around. So I do want you to go implement your own version of each, but I'm going to go ahead and show what I mean by re-implementing stuff using each as an example. So I'm going to solve that one for you. So let's see. I started to build a function that would randomly shuffle an array. I think to be a little bit more transparent, though, I think I'm just going to console log each of the elements in the array. So remember, in each, both the native for each and the underscore version of each, at each iteration, the callback function has access to the current value, the index, and the collection. So you'll see each time we iterate through, we console log the current value, the index, and then the collection. So now I want to rebuild my own version that can do the same thing. So how am I going to do this? The first thing that I'm going to think about is I'm going to try to break it down into smaller tasks and figure out what pieces of the puzzle I know starting out. I know that I'm going to be building a function. I'm going to call it each. In the instructions, it says like underscore dot each and underscore dot whatever the function is. You can feel free just to call your function each or map or filter. You don't have to add the underscore. So I know that it's a function. I also know that each takes a, when we use it with underscore, the first argument is a collection. So in this case, I was using an array. And the second argument is a callback function. So I know it's going to take a collection and a callback function. I'll call it callback. And then I know that I want it to iterate over my collection and then call the callback function with each value of my collection. So first, let's just make it work for arrays. To iterate over an array, I know that I want to make a for loop. And now I want to, inside that for loop, call my callback with the current value of collection. So the current value at each iteration is going to be collection I. But I also want my callback, just in case I need it, to have access to the index and the collection as well. So the way that I'm going to do this is to also pass in I, which will be the index, and then the collection that we've originally passed into each. So now I can call my version of each. Let's see, I'm going to abstract this callback above where I was console logging everything. I'm going to put that into a separate function called logger. All right, so now I can call my version of each. I'm going to pass it range, and I'm also going to pass it logger. And it does the same thing as the for each did originally. Before I move forward and make it work with objects, are there questions about how it works in its current state? Alrighty, cool. So now let's make it a little bit more flexible so it can work with this object that I've defined as well. So we know that we'll keep that for structure if it's an array. So I'm just going to say if array use for loop. However, if it's an object, I'll probably want to use a for in loop. So that would look something like this. For var key in collection, key is just an arbitrary variable, but collection here is referring to the collection I pass into each. For key in collection, callback collection key. So that's going to be my current value at each iteration. And then instead of the index, I give it the key for objects. And then I still pass in the original collection just as I did above. So this will handle doing the same thing with objects. Now we just need to build in a conditional so it knows which kind of loop to use. Does anyone want to guess how I might figure out if it's an array or not? Yeah, I'm going to use array as array. The reason being is that, remember, I can go ahead and define it. Array is array collection. So remember that if I console log type of with an array, so I'm using range here, and I console log the type of, it's going to say it's an object. So arrays and objects would both go to the else section if I'm looking at type of, because behind the scenes, arrays are also objects, which is why we have this handy method called array.isArray to test if a collection is not only an object, but specifically an array. And if it's not an array, we're just going to assume that the user is passing in an object. You could make it a little more flexible, where you gave them an error message if they didn't give you the right type of collection. But for my implementation right now, I'm not going to worry. I'm just going to assume that they know what they're doing. Cool. Does for in work on arrays at all? I'll get into that in a second, Patrick. So now I want to try my implementation of each using my object from above. Cool. Oh, I did. I console logged it. I didn't use each. I was like, why doesn't that look the way I expected it to look? All right, there we go. So now you'll see we have the value, we have the key, and then we have the whole collection logged out on each line. Does that make sense? I guess, does all of it make sense? Are there any questions about how I did that? Cool, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of this, and I'm actually not gonna post it because, again, I want you to go and solve that problem on your own as well. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a push in the right direction in understanding what it means to be re-implementing these functions. Now I will answer Patrick's questions about whether for in loops will work for arrays. And I know that I've tried this before. I don't remember the last time I did it. I believe that they will. They should work because right behind the scenes it's saying, if we say var key in collection, it's saying collection key, and arrays behind the scenes look something like range is actually an object whose keys look like this. Oops, sorry. So why don't we'll try a for in loop with our array range. So the answer is yes, they do work, just as you would expect. All right, so that's all I have for the moment. Again, if you're navigating from that main page, go to re-implementing _, and they're all listed here. Don't worry if you're not even close to done with the closure exercises or you haven't finished scope. We will, if you get to it, you'll start working on this afternoon. And whether you do or not, we'll continue to work on it at the beginning of class tomorrow morning. I probably won't have a wrap up after this. So let's see. Are there any questions between now and tomorrow morning? We'll meet for a few minutes tomorrow morning at the beginning of class. All right, cool. In that case, everyone have a nice afternoon and go enjoy the rest of class. Work hard. Let us know if you have questions.